When I pulled into my driveway that Tuesday afternoon, I wasn't supposed to even be there. My business trip to Chicago had been cut short after the client canceled the final 2 days of meetings. I figured I'd surprise myself with a little break at home, maybe relax in my own mansion for a few days before heading back to the grind. I didn't tell anyone I was coming back early, not even my assistant, and especially not the HOA that loved to stick their noses into everything I did. From the outside, everything looked normal. My massive custom-built mansion sat like a jewel in the quiet manicured neighborhood, towering a little taller than the other houses. I knew the HOA hated that. They claimed it disrupted the uniform aesthetic, but there was nothing in their rules that said I couldn't build the home I wanted. My gate slid open as I approached, and I parked in my usual spot, a little smile forming as I thought about a long shower and maybe a nap in my own bed. But the second I opened the front door, something was wrong. The air smelled like cheap perfume mixed with wine. The faint sound of laughter drifted from the living room, and when I stepped inside, I froze. Sitting on my leather couch, holding a glass of my expensive bourbon, was Karen, the self-appointed queen of the HOA, a woman who had made it her life's mission to harass me since the day I moved in. She wasn't alone. Scattered around my living room were half-empty pizza boxes, wine bottles, even a couple of duffel bags. It looked like someone had been living there, not for a few hours, not even for a day, but for weeks. And the someone was Karen. She didn't even flinch when she saw me. Instead, she stood up, fake smile plastered across her face, and said, "Oh, you're home early. We were just making sure everything was in order." "In order?" I repeated, my voice low, my hand tightening on my briefcase. "You're drinking my bourbon, sitting on my couch, and trashing my living room. What the hell are you doing in my house, Karen?" That's when she dropped the act and went full Karen. Her face twisted into indignation as if I were the one intruding. "Excuse me. This property is under the jurisdiction of the HOA. We had reason to believe you abandoned it. 2 weeks without notice is a violation of our community guidelines. As president, I took responsibility for ensuring this house didn't fall into neglect." I couldn't believe it. 2 weeks? That's all it takes for you to move in and throw yourself a party? Are you insane? She straightened her blouse, refusing to back down. "Don't you dare talk to me like that in front of my guests. We've been keeping your home safe. You should be grateful. Imagine if squatters broke in." "Oh wait, that's basically what you're accusing me of, isn't it? Do you know how offensive that is?" I scanned the room again, my jaw tightening. She wasn't exaggerating about guests. 2 other HOA board members were lounging like they owned the place, one of them scrolling through my Netflix account, the other nibbling on what looked like my imported cheese from the fridge. My blood boiled. "This ends now," I said, pulling out my phone. "You and your freeloading friends have exactly 30 seconds to get out before I call the cops." Karen's smirk widened. She didn't look scared, not even slightly. "Go ahead," she said, lifting her glass in a mock toast. "Call them. But when they get here, who do you think they'll believe? A loud, aggressive homeowner who hasn't been around for 2 weeks, or the HOA president who stepped up to protect community property? We've already documented your absence. I'll tell them you abandoned the home. That makes me the responsible caretaker." For a second, I was too stunned to respond. This woman had thought it all through. She really believed she could gaslight the cops into thinking I didn't belong in my own mansion. I took a step closer, lowering my voice. "Karen, you've crossed the line this time. I don't care what kind of twisted HOA rulebook you've written in your head, but this is breaking and entering. You're a criminal. And when the cops get here, you'll be leaving in handcuffs." Her eyes narrowed, and for the first time a flicker of doubt crossed her face. But instead of backing down, she doubled down. She pulled out her phone and said loudly, "That's it. I'm calling the police myself. You're threatening me in my own neighborhood. You came home early and are trespassing on a property that was under my supervision. Let's see who they believe." I watched her dial 911, calmly explaining that an aggressive man had just broken into her property and was threatening her safety. My fist clenched so hard my knuckles went white. She was actually doing it, flipping the script so that I looked like the criminal. When she hung up, she gave me that smug, victorious smile that made every homeowner in the neighborhood despise her. "They'll be here any minute. I suggest you calm down and sit quietly if you don't want this to get worse." I glanced at the half-eaten pizza on my antique oak table, the red wine stains on my rug, the empty bottles scattered across the floor. Every nerve in my body screamed to throw her and her cronies out right then and there, but I forced myself to breathe. If the cops showed up while I was shouting or shoving, I'd play right into her hands instead. I started snapping photos, the mess, the bottles, the duffel bags, the way they'd turned my pristine mansion into a crash pad. Karen immediately barked at me to stop. "You don't have permission to take photos in here," she snapped. "My house, my rules." I shot back, clicking away. Her fake confidence began to falter, but before she could say anything else, red and blue lights flashed across my driveway. The cops were here. Karen leapt to her feet, straightening her hair and pushing her shoulders back like she was about to walk into court as the star witness. She ran to the door before I could stop her, meeting the officers on the porch with tears already forming in her eyes. "Thank God you're here," she cried, voice dripping with rehearsed distress. "This man broke into the house. He's been threatening us, yelling, taking pictures. We were just trying to keep the place safe, and now I'm scared for my life." The officers exchanged a look, then turned to me. "Sir, can we see some ID?" one of them asked firmly, and just like that, the trap was sprung. Karen had set the stage perfectly. If I didn't play this right, I could be the one walking out of my own mansion in handcuffs. The police officer's tone was calm, but carried that firm edge that meant this wasn't a casual check. Karen hovered beside him, clutching her pearls like some kind of damsel in distress, eyes darting at me with that smug little flicker that told me she thought she had already won. "Of course," I said, pulling out my wallet. I handed over my driver's license, the address printed clearly across the top. The officer glanced at it, then back at the towering mansion behind me, then again at my face. "Sir, this address is listed here, but we're going to need proof of ownership. Do you have a deed or mail that confirms you live here?" I almost laughed. "Proof of ownership? I just got off a flight. I don't carry my deed around in my briefcase." Karen jumped in, her voice sharp and syrupy sweet at the same time. "Officers, don't let him confuse you. This man hasn't been seen in the neighborhood for over 2 weeks. Everyone knows it. He abandoned the property. As president of the HOA, I was forced to step in and secure the house for the safety of our community. This isn't his residence anymore. It's under HOA supervision until further notice." The gall of it almost made me choke. She's lying. "I was on a business trip. I have travel receipts, flight stubs. Hell, my assistant booked everything. You can call my office right now. I live here. This is my house. They've been squatting inside, drinking, eating, trashing my property." One of the officers glanced past Karen into the living room, his eyes flicking over the wine bottles and pizza boxes. He didn't say anything, but I could tell he noticed. Still, procedure meant they had to take her claim seriously. Karen clutched the officer's arm like she was holding on for dear life. "Please don't let him near us. He's unstable. He barged in here shouting, taking pictures, threatening us. We didn't feel safe." I took a deep breath, forcing myself not to shout, not to let her performance get under my skin. "Officer, check the security cameras. I've got them all over the property. Every inch of this place is covered, including the front door. You'll see exactly when I left for my trip and exactly when they broke in." Karen's face froze. Just for a split second, her mask cracked. She hadn't thought about the cameras. The taller officer turned to me. "Where's the control system for the footage?" "In my office, upstairs. I'll take you there." Karen immediately stepped forward, blocking the door with her arms spread. "You can't let him wander around. This is still under dispute. He's trying to tamper with evidence." That did it. My patience snapped. "Tamper with evidence? Lady, you've been living in my house like it's a damn Airbnb and you think I'm tampering? Step aside before I have you arrested for obstruction." The officer put a hand between us. "Ma'am, we'll need to see the footage." "Please move aside." Karen's lips pressed into a thin line. For the first time that day, she had no comeback. She moved just enough for us to pass. We headed upstairs, the officers following close behind. My office was immaculate, just as I'd left it. I sat at the desk, powered on the system, and logged into my account. Within seconds, the screen lit up with feeds from every corner of the property. I scrolled back to 2 weeks ago, the day I left. There I was, suitcase in hand, locking the front door behind me. Fast forward 3 days, and there it was. Karen and her little posse breaking in through the back door with a spare HOA lockbox key they weren't authorized to use. I paused the video, letting the officers take it in. "Looks pretty clear to me," I said, my voice tight. They leaned closer. The evidence was undeniable. Karen and her crew had been slipping in and out for days, dragging in bags, hosting little parties, lounging around like they owned the place. Every timestamp, every clip told the story. The shorter officer nodded slowly. Yeah, this doesn't look like caretaking. This looks like unauthorized entry. Relief washed over me, but only for a second, because Karen was already spinning her next web downstairs. I could hear her voice rising, carrying up the staircase. She was calling someone, probably the rest of the HOA board, rallying reinforcements to her cause. The officers exchanged a glance. "We'll need to speak with her again," one said. We went back down, and sure enough, Karen was standing in the middle of the living room, phone pressed to her ear, pacing like she was orchestrating a war strategy. She hung up the moment she saw us. "Well?" she demanded, crossing her arms. "Did you find anything?" The taller officer cleared his throat. "Ma'am, the footage shows you and others entering the property without the owner's consent. That could be considered trespassing." Karen's jaw dropped, but she recovered fast. "Trespassing? Are you kidding me? The HOA has rights. We have bylaws that clearly state if a property is neglected, the board can step in to secure it." This man abandoned his home. I was doing my duty. I stepped forward, my voice sharp. "Neglect? 2 weeks is not neglect. You knew I was gone on business. You used that as an excuse to throw yourself a vacation in my mansion." Her eyes burned with fury. "You think you can just waltz into this neighborhood, build your oversized monstrosity of a house, ignore all the rules, and get away with it? Not on my watch. I don't care if you think you own this property. In this community, the HOA decides what's right." That was it. That was her fatal mistake. Saying it in front of the cops, revealing what this was really about. Control. It was never about safety. It was about power. About punishing me for daring to live outside her little HOA fantasy bubble. The officers didn't arrest her, not yet. They said it would be up to me to press charges, that I should file a formal complaint and provide all the footage as evidence. But they did make one thing clear. She and her guests had to leave immediately. Karen's face twisted with rage. "You can't do this. You can't throw me out. I'm the president of this HOA. The officer didn't flinch. "Ma'am, if you don't leave voluntarily, we'll have to escort you out." For the first time since I'd known her, Karen looked truly powerless. She grabbed her bags, barking orders at her cronies to gather their things. As they shuffled toward the door, she hissed at me under her breath. "This isn't over. You'll regret humiliating me like this. The HOA always wins." I just stood there, arms folded, watching as they walked out of my house. But as the door slammed shut behind them, I knew one thing for certain. She meant it. This wasn't the end. Karen wasn't going to let this go. And if I wasn't ready, she'd come back swinging harder than ever. I looked around my trashed living room at the wine stains, the crumbs, the smell of cheap perfume lingering in the air. It was more than an invasion. It was a declaration of war, and I was ready to fight back. The morning after Karen was forced out of my house, I woke up to the sound of shouting outside. At first, I thought it was just landscapers or delivery trucks, but when I pulled back the curtains, my jaw tightened. Karen was standing at the end of my driveway with a group of HOA members, clipboards in hand, pointing at my house like they were inspecting a crime scene. Her voice carried across the quiet street. "This is exactly what I've been warning you all about," she was saying, her hands waving theatrically. "Look at this unsightly architecture, the way it sticks out like a sore thumb. And don't get me started on his so-called landscaping. Half of those hedges don't meet HOA guidelines. He thinks because he's rich, he can just do whatever he wants." A few neighbors shifted uncomfortably, clearly dragged into this circus against their will. Others were nodding along, too afraid of Karen to challenge her. I opened the front door and stepped outside. "Karen," I called, my voice calm but firm. "You're trespassing again. If you don't get off my property in 30 seconds, I'll call the police." She whirled around, eyes flashing. "Oh, don't you dare threaten me. We're conducting an emergency inspection of your property on behalf of the HOA. This house is out of compliance in more ways than I can count. You'll be receiving formal citations." I raised an eyebrow. "An inspection? Without notice? Without permission? That's not how it works, Karen. You don't just wake up and decide to storm someone's house with a mob." She sneered. "Maybe if you actually attended HOA meetings instead of hiding in your mansion, you'd know the rules. We have every right to be here." I pulled my phone from my pocket. "Great, let's test that theory." I started recording, panning over the group of clipboard-wielding board members standing on my driveway. Karen immediately tried to block the camera with her hand. You can't record me without my permission, she snapped. Oh, but you can break into my house, live here for 2 weeks, and trash it? Don't worry, Karen, this video will pair nicely with the police report. Her face reddened, and she yanked the nearest board member forward. Mark, tell him. Tell him he's in violation. Mark, a nervous man with thinning hair, stammered, well, the bylaws do mention. I cut him off. Mark, you know as well as I do that nothing in your little rule book allows breaking and entering. And nothing allows this stunt either. You're all standing on private property. That means you're trespassing. Karen jabbed a finger in my direction. You think you're clever, but the HOA has power. I can fine you into bankruptcy if I want. Every day your house violates our standards is another penalty. And when you don't pay, we'll put a lien on your property. You won't own this mansion for long. Her words hit harder than I wanted to admit. I knew HOAs could be ruthless with fines and legal action. I also knew Karen was vindictive enough to abuse every loophole in the book to come after me. But I wasn't about to show fear. Not in front of her. Go ahead, I said, smiling coldly. Send your fines. I'll be waiting with my lawyer. And while you're at it, let me remind you the police already have your little house party on video. You're lucky I didn't press charges yesterday. Don't push me to change my mind. Karen froze for a moment, her confidence faltering, but then she doubled down as always. You're bluffing. No jury in the world would side with you against the HOA. We're the backbone of this neighborhood. You're just some arrogant outsider who thinks money makes him untouchable. I stepped closer, lowering my voice so only she could hear. This outsider owns the house you broke into. And unlike you, I play chess, not checkers. Keep pushing me, and I'll take you and your little kingdom down piece by piece. Her nostrils flared, but before she could respond, one of the officers from yesterday pulled up in a patrol car. Apparently, one of the neighbors had called about the commotion. The officer stepped out, sighing when he saw who was involved. Ma'am, sir, we just went through this yesterday. What's going on now? Karen immediately launched into her tirade, pointing at me, shouting about violations, safety hazards, abandoned property. The whole script. The officer let her ramble for a full minute before finally holding up his hand. Ma'am, we've reviewed the footage from yesterday. We know what happened. If you and your group don't clear off his property right now, you'll be cited for trespassing. Do you understand? Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish. For once, she had no comeback. She turned on her heel, barking at the board members to follow. As they shuffled away, she threw me one last glare over her shoulder. This isn't over. You think you've won, but you haven't seen what I'm capable of. The officer shook his head, muttering, You've got your hands full with that one. Tell me about it, I replied, but deep down I knew Karen wasn't bluffing. She'd been embarrassed in front of the neighborhood, in front of the police, and most importantly, in front of me. A woman like her didn't forgive humiliation. She thrived on vengeance. That night I stayed up late combing through the HOA bylaws, highlighting every loophole, every vague clause Karen might try to weaponize. I also called my lawyer, who promised to prepare defenses against liens, fines, and any other tricks she might pull. But even as I armed myself legally, I couldn't shake the feeling that Karen was already plotting something worse, something outside the rulebook. That feeling was confirmed 2 days later when I came home from running errands to find the locks on my gates had been changed. For a moment, I thought I was hallucinating. I pressed the remote, but the gates didn't budge. The keypad I normally used flashed an error code, and there, taped to the wrought iron bars, was an official-looking notice. Property seized pending HOA review. I stood there in disbelief, staring at the paper, my blood pressure spiking. She hadn't even waited a week. She was escalating already, trying to lock me out of my own home. I ripped the notice down and stormed back to my car, dialing my lawyer with shaking hands. She's done it again, I growled. She actually locked me out of my own mansion. If Karen wanted war, then war was exactly what she was going to get. I stood outside my own gates with the so-called seizure notice crumpled in my fist, seething. The audacity of this woman was beyond comprehension. Not only had she squatted in my mansion for 2 weeks, she now thought she could legally lock me out with some fake paperwork. Within an hour, my lawyer, Richard, arrived. A tall, silver-haired man with a permanent scowl that could melt steel. He glanced at the paper, then at the changed locks. His expression darkened. She's bold, I'll give her that, Richard muttered. But this is complete nonsense. HOAs don't have the authority to seize private property. This isn't even a real legal notice, it's a scare tactic. Scare tactic or not, she changed the locks, I said. I can't even get into my own house, Richard smirked. Then let's fix that. He pulled out his phone, dialed the police, and within 30 minutes, 2 squad cars rolled up. The officers examined the locks, the notice, and my ID. The verdict was swift. This is illegal, one officer said. Ma'am, or whoever did this, had no right to alter your property without a court order. We'll file a report, but you're clear to have the locks changed back immediately. By that evening, a locksmith had replaced everything, and I was back inside my mansion. But victory felt hollow. I knew Karen wouldn't stop here. Each time I pushed back, she escalated. And eventually, she'd cross a line even her HOA cronies couldn't protect her from. The line came sooner than I expected. 2 nights later, at around 1 a.m., I woke to the sound of footsteps echoing in the hallway outside my bedroom. My heart slammed in my chest. I grabbed the bat I kept by the bed, crept to the door and yanked it open. There, standing in the moonlit hallway, was Karen. She froze, caught mid-step, her hand holding a set of papers. What the hell are you doing in my house? I roared. Her eyes darted wildly, then she straightened her spine. I came to serve you. This is an official HOA notice of violation. I could barely contain my rage. At 1 a.m, inside my house? You don't understand, she stammered. You forced my hand. The HOA has voted to fine you every day until this monstrosity is brought into compliance. If you don't pay, we'll take the property. It's only fair. You broke in again, I snapped. That's not serving papers, that's criminal trespass. Do you know what happens to repeat offenders? Before she could respond, the security alarm I'd armed earlier blared through the mansion. Within minutes, the same police officers who'd been here twice already showed up. This time, there was no debate. Karen was handcuffed on the spot, her shrill protest echoing down the hallway. This is unlawful. I'm the HOA president. You can't treat me this way. He's the one breaking the rules, not me. But the officers didn't flinch. They let her out, her voice growing fainter as the car door slammed shut. For the first time in weeks, I felt a wave of relief. The nightmare was over, or so I thought. The next morning, my phone buzzed nonstop. Neighbors were texting, emailing, even calling me. Word had spread like wildfire. The HOA president arrested at my house in the middle of the night. Some were furious at her, some embarrassed, but most relieved. She'd been terrorizing this neighborhood for years, and now she'd finally been exposed. By noon, half the board had resigned. The other half called an emergency meeting without Karen. They wanted nothing to do with her anymore. A few even came to my door, sheepishly apologizing for going along with her schemes. I accepted their apologies, but I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. With Richard's help, I pressed charges: breaking and entering, trespassing, harassment, and attempted fraud. The security footage, police reports, and eyewitness accounts painted a damning picture. Even the HOA bylaws she had clung to so desperately were useless in court. Karen tried everything to wriggle out, claiming she had authority as president, claiming I was an absentee owner, even claiming she'd been invited to stay in the mansion by mutual agreement. None of it held up. The judge didn't buy a word of it. When the gavel finally came down, Karen was sentenced to probation, community service, and ordered to pay restitution for the damages she caused to my property. The humiliation was complete, but for me, the real victory came afterward. With Karen disgraced and banned from holding any position in the HOA ever again, the neighborhood finally began to breathe. People spoke freely, laughed at block parties, decorated their homes without fear of her arbitrary fines. And me. I finally got to enjoy my mansion in peace, no longer under siege from the tyrant next door. One afternoon, as I sat on my balcony sipping a glass of bourbon, the same bourbon Karen had stolen weeks earlier, I thought back to that first moment I found her lounging on my couch. How smug she'd been, how convinced that she was untouchable. Now she was gone. The HOA no longer controlled me. And Karen, well, rumor had it she'd moved in with her sister 2 towns over, banned from the very neighborhood she once ruled like a queen. For the first time since moving in, I smiled without the weight of her shadow looming over me. Karen had called the cops on me, tried to flip the script, and even tried to seize my mansion. But in the end, all she did was destroy herself, and I finally had my home back.